Okay, welcome to Into the Channel, a podcast primarily about women's football. Before we hit the pitch, if you enjoy the show or love women's football as much as your boys do, come kick it with us. Subscribe or follow YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you like to watch or listen. Comments, ratings, reviews, always appreciated. At ITC_pod on X. I am your host, Dino, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Grant Engel. What is up, man?
I'm feeling fantastic, buddy. We had a little bit of a break. Obviously, the Gold Cup happened. Now we're just rolling right into the NWSL season.
Love it. I'm pretty sure I shampooed all the champagne out of my hair, so I'm feeling good. ready to get back to potting. Ready for this NWSL season. Even though the Into the Channel podcast is the world's preeminent Seattle Reign plus Orlando Pride podcast, perhaps the only Seattle Reign Orlando Pride podcast, doesn't mean we won't have an eye on all 14 NWSL teams this season. And with UEFA Women's Champions League on hiatus for another week or so, and the U.S. Women's National Team's triumph at the CONCACAF W Gold Cup in our rearview mirror, now it's time to turn our attention to the NWSL, which sort of kicks off Friday night, San Diego Wave versus Gotham FC, but we cracked the seal for real, Saturday afternoon, 1 p.m. Eastern, when the Kansas City Current take on the Portland Thorns. I want to do something fun, so we're going to preview all 14 teams. I want to wait until the end of the preview, until we've talked through all 14, and then I want each of us to make a finals pick. So apologies for kind of springing this on you, but I think it could be fun, because I think we're going to learn a lot. And let's make a pick. That way we're on record. A lot of pitch to cover, my good man. So Mr. Grant Engel, where shall we get started?
Well, I do half-jokingly say, you used the term crack the seal earlier. There we go. I do occasionally make the joke that we don't prepare for this podcast. It's half-jokingly. I did not read your preview text, so I did not know we were making finals picks. Good job out of you. That's the short corner that you just pulled on me, and I'm completely unaware. I don't have somebody marking the second taker out there. So, okay, that's fine. We'll do it, though. I'll make a finals pick with you, buddy. Where should we start here? I'm already looking back here. I mean, just so everybody knows, just so everybody's aware, I'm outside now. I'm going to the games, bro. I say we watch the games. I'm in the stadium. I'm in Lumen Field watching the Seattle Reign. You mentioned this is the soon to be the world's preeminent, not even soon to be. This is the world's preeminent Seattle Reign Orlando Pride podcast.
Damn right.
I appreciate you letting me go first. So obviously, I'm starting right here in the beautiful Emerald City. Seattle had a bit of an up and down season last year. They were formerly the OL Reign last year. They're now Seattle Reign, back to their original name. They had 9 wins, 5 draws, and 8 losses in the regular season. They finished 4th in the table. They squeaked into the playoff by finishing the season with 2 draws at home and then a 3-0 win on the road at Chicago. Your boy was at those 2 draws at home, by the way. Again, totally self-interested. Not sure why I needed to bring that up.
Let's go.
We need to recognize in the middle of the season, as the team was going into the World Cup, Megan Rapinoe announced that she was headed toward retirement. We'll talk more about that later. Even though they kind of squeaked into the playoffs, the Reign made the NWSL final after beating Angel City at home in a playoff game. Your boy was there. And then they also beat the San Diego Wave in San Diego. Then in that final, Megan Rapinoe, the legend, in her words, and I'm quoting here, quote, fucking yeeted, end quote, her Achilles. It was pretty brutal to watch that she did it 6 minutes into the final, not just because it was going to, change the result of the match, but to see a legend go out like that. It's amazing that she has a great sense of humor and that she, you could tell by the look on her face, she knew it was catastrophic the moment it happened. And that pretty much led to Midge Purce, Lynn Williams, and Esther Gonzalez being a total nightmare up front. Gotham controlling the pace of the game, and they took away the NWSL title from my Reign. But Gotham wasn't done taking from Seattle, it turned out. I mentioned Rapinoe's retirement. That was unfortunate. Then we got some more unfortunate news. Gotham stole more of our players. On January 4th, Rose Lavelle and Emily Sonnet signed with those bats. So let's just keep it a buck, my man. We lost the most important player in the history of the franchise, an obvious locker room leader, Megan Rapinoe.
Hurts.
Then we lost Rose Lavelle and Emily Sonnet, 2 productive, experienced players. Sonnet was obviously only here for 1 season. Lavelle was here only for 3, but that U.S. Women's National Team experience, that World Cup experience, that leadership, that's going to leave a vacuum for my squad. And so feels like we're in a little bit of a rebuilding stage, I would say.
With the landscape of the NWSL changing which we've talked a lot about on the pod, do you think the NWSL takes on the makeup of other football leagues around the world? Or do you think the NWSL continues on the track looking more like a traditional American sports league with parity pretty much architected into the design of the league? And the reason I ask is twofold. If the NWSL maintains its more like American style format, then I think we can expect kind of every team to cycle through ups and downs. But if NWSL looks more like the Premier League, let's say, then I think a winter like the Reign had could kind of be devastating, but we're not there just yet. Sometimes a team takes themselves into a transitional year. Other times it can kind of feel like a transitional year just happens to you. Either way, I don't know. What are the hallmarks that kind of make bridging of the eras successful? We talked a little bit about that with the U.S. women's national team. Now your club team is kind of in that same boat.
I like that you use the term, obviously, transitional. You talk about bridging eras. I think that is kind of has to be part of the strategy. So, like, this team is going to be led by the defense. Alana Cook, Sofia Huerta, and then Seattle Reign legend Lauren Barnes, Lou Barnes on the back line. The Canadian superstar that we've talked about several times, Quinn, one of the best defensive midfielders in the league. If you look at kind of what are those hallmarks of bridging the gap, like you have to have some of those young players and they have to develop. You have to turn them into your leaders. But then you need your folks like Lou Barnes, Quinn, and then Jess Fishlock, another Seattle Reign absolute legend. You need them to kind of coach those young players along and be willing to hand the reins, no pun intended, hand the reins to them to allow that transition to happen. So I think that's what we got to be looking for. Speaking of Canadian players, we talked about Jordan Huitema during the CONCACAF W Gold Cup.
Yep.
She'll need to take a massive step forward. She has to be a reliable goal-scoring number 9. I think you got to look for her link-up play with forwards Bethany Balser, who has 22 goals in league play over the last 3 seasons. And if I had to name one player I'm really interested in keeping an eye on, 24-year-old forward Ziara King, who has shown some audaciousness and some really clever playing style, at least when I've seen her both live and on television. So I think to bridge that gap, you need the more experienced players to encourage the younger players, not get on them, not like blast them when they're down and they're having a hard time, and just say, hey, you guys are up next. You're carrying this club forward. And I think between Lou Barnes, Jess Fishlock, and Quinn, I think we have the captains to do that, but it doesn't necessarily translate to immediate on-field success.
Yeah, I think something we've seen with this U.S. women's national team just recently is as you're kind of bridging these eras, there is still a role to play for the established veterans, but they kind of like have to keep huge parts of their game, but also carve out new space for the young players, like the next generation players. So going to be pretty interesting to watch. Again, into the channel, the world's preeminent Seattle Reign Orlando Pride podcast. This will not be the last you hear from us on this Seattle Reign team. And also, if you were locked into the Gold Cup, you may recognize that Quinn Huitema pairing as they both played a part in Canada's run to the semis, which after watching the final, USA-Brazil, if I'm Canada, if I'm some of those players on that Canada team, I might feel like I left the Gold Cup on the table this year. I think they could easily make the case they were the second best team. So maybe a chance for some retribution for both Quinn and Huitema. Something definitely to keep an eye on.
Definitely in the Olympics, too. I think Canada is going to be very motivated going into that tournament. Maybe big trouble lurking in little national teams like Spain and France, though. Those teams did not compete in the CONCACAF W Gold Cup.
Iron sharpens iron.
That's right.
Let's shift gears to my Orlando Pride. So last year, 10 wins, 11 losses, 1 draw, putting them 9th in the table just outside the playoffs. Silver lining though, 10 wins, good for 3rd in the NWSL, winning obviously an important category. So happy we did well there. 7 of those wins coming at home, which means our away performance maybe left a lot to be desired. I think this is a good spot in the pod to make somewhat of a proclamation about my NWSL casual status. So if you listen to the show, I'm more of an international guy, more of a UEFA guy. This is going to be my first real deep dive into the NWSL. I also am one of the world's preeminent Babida Banda fanboy podcasters. So I do have that in my back pocket as we talk about the Pride. But what else do I need to know about my hometown squad?
First, before I get into that, with these lights, this scarf is getting too fucking hot, so I'm just going to go ahead and it's warm in this office. Okay, so what should you know about your hometown squad? I think you should be fucking extremely excited. they signed Brazilian midfielder Angelina, my Seattle Reign. Now, Angelina has been battling injuries the last couple years. She's a 24-year-old midfielder, had an ACL injury in 2022, just started to come back last year. You guys like Brazilian players, good taste in players to have, might I add. Obviously, Angelina joins the absolute legend, Marta, and also Adriana. Adriana had 6 goals and 4 assists for you guys last year. And Raffaele, who we talked about in the Gold Cup final episode, suffered that foot injury. I haven't seen the update on that yet. Hopefully it's not too serious. But that is a nice Brazilian core. But buddy, you don't need me. You mentioned it yourself, what you're an expert in. You don't need me to tell you why you should be psyched. Let me just pass the ball back to you, give and go style. You know why you're excited.
100%. Obviously, I'm a big Brazil fan too, so I love the way they play. I'm going to be very excited to see some of that new chemistry. But the signing of Barbara Banda, obviously seismic. She's a nightmare to match up with one-on-one. And if you don't believe me, you can ask the other 5 women she took on in a professional boxing ring, 4 of whom she knocked out. So she's also got a 5-0 boxing record professionally on her resume. Unbelievable. So we are talking about a superior, capital W, world-class athlete. And I wanted to give the audience a little look into my personal life, where I'm also an avid sports card collector. So I purchased this card months before Banda signed with the Orlando Pride. This is a Barbara Banda rookie card. Okay. And there are only 23 of these. This is the pink foil variation. And I have number 23 out of 23. So there are only 22 other Barbara Banda pink foil rookie cards in the entire world. So yeah, if you don't believe that I am as Copper Queen as they get for, a white guy that lives in Orlando, whitish guy, there's your proof. Side note, big fan of this set, by the way. You could probably still grab a box of these at your local Walmart or Target if you're interested. It's a high recommendation from your boy, but I digress. I'm obviously over the moon with the signing. How much can one number 9 really change the fortunes of an entire football team?
A lot. She steps into the league and she's going to be one of the absolute best players in the league. We're talking about a team that barely missed out on the playoffs, had a dreadful start to the season, had a dreadful away record, and still barely missed. They were tied on points with Gotham, the champions. They were tied on 31 points with Gotham, but just 2 goals behind them in goal differential. I mean, I just think there are a lot of examples of if there is one player on the pitch that you drop in and they have an outsized impact in a sport where it's only one player in like the scope of 11, it's a number 9 in football or it's a quarterback in American football, who can immediately change the fortunes and change the momentum, change the shape, change all your opponent's game plans, is when you put an absolute world-class, as you put it, with a capital W player up there. And she's that player. I hate to oversell it, but I actually don't hate to oversell it because I don't think you can. And I love some good hyperbole. I think she immediately vaults you guys to one of the best teams in the league.
Wow. Yeah, obviously you never know what the adjustment period is going to be like, but I mean, her athleticism, her speed, and her finishing ability, I mean, you got to imagine that we'll find a way to make up that 2-goal differential from last year if needed. I think the loss of Messiah Bright's going to hurt. Outside of that, sure. I think things are definitely looking up in Orlando. Obviously, making the playoffs would be tremendous this year. You already know your boy's going to be in the building for as many of these Pride matches as I can make. And any Pride fans out there, hit us up in the YouTube comments. Happy to connect. We'd be excited to kind of talk about this team. As we mentioned earlier, we're going to be talking quite a bit about both the Seattle Reign and the Orlando Pride, our respective teams. We are covering women's football every week here on Into the Channel, sometimes twice a week if we're in good form. Let us know what we missed in the comments. Obviously, everyone out there who chimes in elevates the show. You have no idea how much Grant and I appreciate it. Like Grant always says, this is a learning podcast, and we learn just as much from each and every one of you as we do from our independent research and from watching the games, bro. Be sure to like if you liked and subscribe if you love the women's game as much as your boys do. This week, mega NWSL preview. We covered all 14 NWSL teams as they kick off the season. In our next episode, we're going to preview all 4 UEFA Women's Champions League quarterfinal matchups as well. So if you're not locked into the Champions League, do yourself a favor. Let's broaden those horizons. This is a global game. There is talent on every corner of the planet, and we're doing as much as we can to cover as much of it as we can. Thank you for hanging out with us. Remember to subscribe, and thank you to my co-host, Mr. Grant Engel.
You couldn't have said it better, my good man. Those Champions League games, in my veins, brother. That is some good football. But the NWSL, it's one of the world's elite leagues. We're watching it. We're picking up steam. We're trying to pick up as much as we can. If this video was about one of your favorite teams or your favorite team, let us know what we missed. Let us know what we overlooked. We are trying to pick up as much knowledge as possible. You know, we've watched some of the games from the past seasons, but we don't claim to know it all. So just drop it in the comments. Let us know what we need to cover for next time. We'll be watching the games, bro. We know you will too. We'll see you guys next time.